My humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Piran Sankaran, Guru Piran Nyo, fellow Nyanis. Today, I want to, continue from the last discussions that we had. We had some really good discussions, and the discussions spoke about how do we prepare for our meditation, like everything in life. That requires a fair bit of effort to do the preparation. When we prepare really well, we are able to intensify our introspection, contemplation, reflection, and meditation. And when that we do, our mind becomes more peaceful, more calmer, and and we see that that reinforces our meditation. Our uh, jnana or wisdom improves because we have a sense of clarity of thought, a sense of calmness and coolness. The mind has the ability to now, uh, you know, not be perturbed by anything, but focus, get greater focus to be able to achieve the ultimate outcome, which is essentially to be at peace and to be able to discover its own true identity. But we also saw that, to prepare our mind, the mind sometimes get caught up with many things. Sometimes it gets itself into knots. And sometimes we can unravel the knots, and sometimes the knots become more and more, intensive. So this is something that prevents us from practicing or in achieving the kind of meditational intensity and sublimity. So we spoke about the qualities of the mind that we need to continuously look out for and prepare our mind. So we see that, everything in our lives have that infinite. And I said, everything powers our infinite, you know, we are that spiritual infinite being. But somehow when the projections come into the human mind that has that demonic, asuric qualities of, vanity, arrogance, pretension, anger, cruelty, ignorance, impurity. I'm listing down the 18 qualities, egoism, slandering people, a kind of delusional state that we have the false belief of things, unable to control our sensory, pleasures and desires, the absence of faith in divinity and that intensity. We give a lot of excuses for, not pursuing that truth, the absence of truthfulness, the absence of that intensity to that longing to know that spiritual knowledge, through rational and, reasoning. Most people find that really difficult, you know. And this is something that sometimes, even when the books are there, teachers are there, people find it really hard to allocate time for this practice of basically the spiritual pursuit is actually to help the mind discover its own spiritual self. And people don't put in that effort to do it. A sense of greed, attachment, a lot of worry things. They worry so much about many things. Most of the time, uh, the worry is just an illusion, right? Even if there's something real that they worry about, because the mind is so clouded, they can't overcome these worries and kind of false values, the values that, are very superficial. So we see that these qualities of the mind, sometimes is so ingrained in the human mind that it has an impact on the quality of life. When the mind is disturbed, even how much, we as a spiritual being, as we've seen in all the scriptures, the mind is spiritual in its own sense. But because the mind is clouded by these qualities of the mind that make it shrunken, we see that the projections of our life becomes, caught up with all these qualities. So you see that when we are miserable to other people, we see that our life becomes miserable. When we are very critical of other people, life also and others can be critical of us. When we put down people, you see that others lose respect for us. So we see that, the human mind, whenever the human mind has this asuric quality, it projects back into every facet of our lives. And if you see that people who are going through these challenges, it's a reflection of what is happening in the human mind. And the asuric quality, see, everybody is, linked to this infinite, this divinity. But when the divinity's illumination passes through our mind that is clouded or fractured or have these demonic qualities, we see that the mind projects that in our lives. Life becomes turbulent, life becomes challenging, constant, not for a short while, continuously turbulence, right? Never ending turbulence. Life becomes very challenging. There's like a dark cloud around them, right? And you see that, there may be many opportunities, but the opportunities don't open up for them. They may be very smart, very intelligent, but you see that because of the state of the mind, you see that, they miss all the opportunities. The best guru could be just next to them or right in front of them, they will miss it. Even for that matter, that infinite divinity is right in front of them, they will miss it. So we see that the clouded mind with all these asuric qualities will prevent us from acquiring this knowledge. We become depressed, we become vindictive, and we can't progress. And there's a sense of frustration that happens. And ultimately, they become unillumined. And there's constant turbulence, fear, anger. And you see that their quality of life, really, really gets degraded. So how to meditate, right? In this state of mind and what's happening in your life, it is very difficult to meditate. The health of the body goes down. The health of the mind goes down. The relationships with people also does not improve or gets worse. Sometimes it just, our whole life becomes so bitter. And I think, if you see that it is the state of mind that projects this, and we see that the state of the mind impact our meditation, and the meditation impact the state of our mind and our life, right? So there's a reinforcing. So if you can't get it in meditation, reflect back what's happening in your mind. There may be turbulence, there may be knots. You need to address those issues. So we see this, that, many people find it very difficult to concentrate, very difficult to meditate. Sometimes they're so caught up with their material, identity, material relationships, material possessions. You see that it is hard for the mind to decouple from it. It is hard for the mind to essentially attain that focus and the quietude. So again, we see in all the scriptures, including Mahan's, that if you want to improve your meditation, first place is find out what is happening in the human mind, in your mind, and how to address them. So again, we saw this. So even how much all of us are connected to the infinite. Some get it, some don't get it, right? All of them are infinite in its own sense. Unfortunately, you see that many people don't realize their full potential. Hence, they struggle in their meditation, they struggle in their introspections, struggle to really make sense of life. So we see this. So this is a very important preparation phase where the state of our mind, part of the spiritual journey is to ensure that our state of our mind is, not imbibing those 18 asuric or demonic qualities. Knowing them is the first step, and then finding out how to keep them out of your mind. Should it come, how do you slowly get rid of them? And there are techniques that one can put in place to address them. So this is something that we see that, the state of the mind has an impact on our meditational practice, and the meditational practice has an impact. If our state of mind is in turbulent, caught up by this asuric quality, our meditational quality also is impacted. And that poor meditational quality will reinforce that, asuric qualities over and over again because one gets frustrated, fear comes in, and so on. So the great saints and sages normally, before they give the initiation or the practice, they will train the disciple to be disciplined, right? So this is one thing that we see, and I personally have experienced this when I first started meditating. All the knots in the head prevented me. Slowly, after understanding that, unpicking the knots, and slowly the mind becomes more clearer. The meditational sadhana starts improving, your focus starts improving. So we see that the other aspect is that when the asuric qualities leave the mind starts regenerating. The mind starts reawakening. The mind starts becoming aware of its own divine qualities because the spirit itself is divine. The spirit itself has got this noble qualities of the mind. But unfortunately, it's been masked by this demonic quality. So when we slowly get rid of that qualities and leave it out, yes, sometimes anger comes, but we leave it out the door. Don't allow it in. And, when you close your eyes, meditate for a short while, take deep breath, you see that, it disappears. So we see this, very important. We also spoke that as these demonic qualities leaves our mind, we see that the 8 divine qualities of the mind starts coming in. So what are the 18 divine qualities that comes into the mind? So we saw that, the mind becomes really fearless. The mind has a sense of purity. It's kind of steadfast spiritual knowledge starts coming in because now you're not caught up by all this, turbulence. You kind of start becoming clearer on your own personality. You see that the mind gets a sense of strength, mental strength, it's able to control the senses. The mind becomes more giving, kind of altruism and charity because you get the abundance of the spiritual, wealth. The mind becomes more sacrificial, not waste its time on itself and get caught up by the ego, but become more and more from the selfishness to the selfness to the selfless and ultimately to the self-realization. Sense of austerity, sense of, controlling its senses, a sense of straightforwardness, there's no beating around the bush, non-violence, ahimsa of the thought, intellect, and actions, the search for truth. The mind becomes more and more patient and calm. It stops criticizing other people. It sees goodness in everybody. You don't have that possessiveness, the greediness, sense of gentleness comes into the mind. Kind of in Malay, we say the mind becomes lembut. Lembut means very soft and gentle. Sense of, restlessness all disappears. A sense of kind of strength and power of the mind starts coming in. And you see that, a sense of modesty. You don't become boastful. There's no pride. You just become more and more humble. So you see that infinite that is coming into the mind now when there is that 18 qualities that make the mind shrunken disappear, the mind becomes inspirational. That, while we're still in this material world, this infinite is percolating into a mind that is inspired. We see that we start imbibing the values, the 7 core values of a Mahan. So we see this very, very clearly that, in great saints and sages, the kind of qualities that start percolating in our own life is this, I said, the quality of what the 7 core values of a Mahan. What does that mean? The first one is that our life, our thoughts, our words, our actions become graceful. So the first door of the G is gracefulness. We become very graceful as, the gentleness comes in. Everything that we do, Even certain words are used, we say, no, no, this is too harsh. Let's make it more gentle, right? So that gentleness, the gracefulness, a sense of gratitude comes in. Wow, life is awesome, you know. Even though, you know, you may have very little material resources, you feel a sense of gratitude. That's the quality of life, the state of our mind, our quality of our life becomes a sense of generosity. You may not have much, but you still want to be able to give back, like how Mahan was, you know. That's what great saints and sages, they never looked at time, they never looked at resources, they just were able to share as best as they can. So our life starts transforming when we imbibe that 18 divine qualities. It happens naturally. We become more patient. The second door is we become more patient, a sense of persistence and perseverance. You know, I heard this thing called, sometimes people say, well, we have to acquire the knowledge. Acquisition of knowledge is one thing, but the longingness, you long for, that wanting to know this truth. You know, when you have the longingness, you don't give excuses, right? So that patience, persistence, perseverance become part of our personality. And you see that our life also starts transforming. We see that the third door is actually mastery of the self. It is no more about the material things, trying to acquire material. It's about, mastering of the self, that the power within oneself. When we look after that, you see that all the capitals of life starts coming, blooming. As I said before, when we master the self, we master the entire universe. And we see that, the spiritual capital, the intellectual capital, the mental capital, you know, all those capitals starts, nurturing and blooming. And we see that our life becomes so rich in this, in this spiritual knowledge, in our life becomes so enriched. So we see that the mastery, we search for that discovery of who we are, what we are, and the purpose of our lives. And we realize that the purpose of our life is to live a life of purpose. The fourth door is we become aware, that the mastery of the self enables us to become aware of the self. And not only within us, we see that when that lens is so divine, we see that, that self starts projecting within us. The divinity starts projecting in us, and you start becoming aware of the divinity in everything that we do. And when you discover the divinity in oneself, you see that, a sense of, wow, that awness. Wow, this is really awesome, right? And a sense of kind of humility. Wow, this that ego just drops off, the material ego drops off, and the sense of spiritual identity starts emerging, a sense of humility. And the mind becomes so flexible and amiable, be able to operate in different circumstances. And this is something we see that when you become more and more divine, you can operate in different levels. As I said, the universal adapter inner starts showing up. No matter what the circumstances were, who were able to relate to things, and the mind becomes agile. And finally, the last door is actually about nobility. You see your life as noble, a life of, blessings, a life of, a gift, a present, right? And we see that, we love our life for whatever it is, no matter what the circumstances are, we start loving what we are, who we are, the circumstances we have, be in at the present moment and the future that we are going to go. So we become truly, thankful. So we see that life completely starts transforming. Instead of regret, instead of, miserableness, instead of complaining, we stop doing all that. Say, no, I'm going to live my life in the best possible way. I'm going to divinize every aspect of my life. Yes, every day as it passes by, my shelf life is getting shorter, I have limited every day, I spend, the less time I have, in this material body. So every moment now becomes a precious moment. When something becomes scarce, the value must go up. So as our time in this material world becomes scarce, every moment must carry greater value. And you see that we live a value-driven or values-driven life, right? There's no more regrets, no more complaints. All the knots starts disappearing. The people that we had animosity, people we did not like, all drops off. The day all that drops off, meditation just blooms, right? So there's an evolution from the 18 demonic qualities, asuric qualities. As we slowly get rid of them, we see that the divine qualities come, and the divine qualities brings in the qualities of the Mahans, the great people. As I said, that GP Mahan, the seven core values starts gripping the mind. And slowly, slowly, you see that the infinite that is projecting through the divine qualities shapes our human personality. And that human personality helps us to reinforce that meditational sadhana, our meditation improves, our focus improves, our concentration improves, our ability to achieve that oneness with everything improves. And something very interesting happens. And we see that evolution as we imbibe that divine qualities that leads us to that seven core qualities of the Mahan. Slowly something very interesting happens, that the evolution, the divine qualities switches into the infinite. Remember, the infinite is projecting through the mind. The mind becomes peaceful, clear, calm, cool, from that selfishness to the selfness, to the selfless, and ultimately to that self-realized. The projection of the infinite now is projected fully into the human mind, and something very interesting happens. The mind projects that infinite possibilities in every facet of his life. And you see that evolution of keeping out that 18 asuric qualities brings in the divine qualities, that brings in the qualities of these great seers and thinkers and prophets that continuously reinforce, ultimately helping us realize that ultimate divinity starts imprinting in our mind, and we see that divinity in everything, in every facet of our lives. Our life becomes a meditational sadhana, and the meditational sadhana becomes our life, right? So, and ultimately, that's what Swamiji says, Swamiji's meditation, meditation is Swamiji. We attain the infinite possibilities. The body may be limited, the mind becomes unlimited. The body is finite, but the mind lives in that finite body in an infinite way. The body is mortal, but the mind lives in immortality. Right? The body may be fleeting, but the mind is steady. Right? The body may be caught up in time, but the mind is eternal. And you see that as the body transitions, age, and ultimately starting to attain that samadhi, the mind is still in a pristine state of infinite possibility and potentiality. This only happens when we are able to keep that 18 asuric qualities out, nurture the divine qualities, and the divine qualities leads, enhances our introspection, contemplation, reflection, and meditation as it reinforces. One fine day, you realize that the material mind is none other than that spiritual infinite mind. And when that day happens, that's the day, that eureka moment of enlightenment and God realization happens. What does that mean? It means, what does it happen? What happens when we become enlightened? Well, before we were living a life like an ordinary human being, like a mortal human being. But now you live a life with extraordinary mindset, in an enlightened way, and see everything in a connected state. Birth, death, whatever it is, it's all a connected state, not something separate that we have to fear about. Death, disease, poverty is part and parcel of life. And we see that the mind is not perturbed by this. And as the mind evolves in that state, you see that the meditation starts improving and it reinforces. And ultimately, when our time here is coming to an end, we still gracefully exit and attain that samadhi state. And this is the ultimate pinnacle of that self-realization. So this is what the great Mahan has taught in this I Got philosophy. This great Mahan showed a way to do this. And, as people struggle in their meditational sadhana, I always say, start with finding out what is the state of the mind. There are a lot of knots that if you slowly take it off, you see that your meditation improves, and ultimately you will attain that enlightened state of existence, both in this mortal world, in your material body. You understand the material body, the limitations of the material body, but you live in an infinite way. This is what this great sages, great Mahan has shown. No matter what meditation you practice, if you have this quality of mind, that meditation will reveal that infinite within your mind. No, not just Kundalini meditation. Any meditation, if you have this approach, you will realize the truth. Mahan showed a particular technique, very simple technique. But there are other techniques that one imbibe through this lens of keeping the asuric qualities out, nurturing the divine qualities. One fine day, you'd feel that connection. And this is the secret of that self-realization. Sandosham.